And just like that, Shane Van Gisbergen has completed his first ever NASCAR Cup Series regular season. So yeah, that's something, I guess. But we're going to go over his final regular season race of the year at Daytona. He led a few laps in this one. Went to the front, to the back, scooted towards the front again, and then went to the back again. We're going to talk about the complications of super speedway racing. We've talked about it a bit already this year, but we're going to go through his race, talk about where he was, talk about how he got to the front, all that fun stuff. But before we get there, the NASCAR playoffs start next week at Darlington Raceway. So that's going to be fun. I created this little bracket group. You just go on NASCAR.com, the NASCAR app, and you go in and you make a bracket. Well, I have a group. So if you want to join this group with me, with the other channel viewers and whatever, just to have fun, just to see where you kind of line up with your bracket, feel free. I will be releasing my bracket, I'm thinking Friday. Friday, I'm going to have my Cup Series playoffs and prediction video where we're going to go through my bracket, and it's going to be horrible. It's going to be very wrong. But I want to see your bracket. I want to see how you do. So yeah, go join this group. I don't know if it's like a link. I don't know if you search up the name, but go to the NASCAR website, the NASCAR app, click on the little bracket, create a bracket, create your bracket, and then you can search up the league. It's just my name. Pretty basic, pretty boring, pretty lame. The bracket should be fun. So hope you can do that. It'll be a fun time. Now let's talk about Daytona. Daytona International Speedway. Of course, the Daytona 500, NASCAR's biggest race, is held here. This is the second time we've been to Daytona this season. Shane Van Gisbergen, it's his third trip to Daytona in the Cup Series. At least he's made a couple of Xfinity starts. Those Cup Series starts, though, not pretty. A DNF in 2024, this race 1 year ago, because his engine decided to explode. And then this year, he technically finished, but he finished several laps down because he was involved in a wreck. So he finished 33rd. 2.5 miles, which is equivalent to 4.02 kilometers, 31 degrees of banking in the turns, and then 18 degrees of banking in the tri-oval. The backstretch pretty much flat. There may be some banking, but it's not enough to note. His old Supercars team was there, at least according to a tweet he put out, so that's neat. That's cool for him. Will Brown was at the race, of course, if you didn't know. Will Brown will be racing in the Xfinity Series race at Portland next week. That'll be a fun opportunity for him with Colleague Racing. Meanwhile, the Cup Series, as I said, is at Darlington, beginning the playoffs in the Cup Series and the Truck Series. So SVG will be at Darlington, obviously for the playoffs because he's competing for a championship. So let's talk about super speedway racing. When we've talked about super speedway racing earlier this year, we've talked about Talladega, Daytona, and Atlanta. Atlanta is kind of its own beast. We talk about it the same as Daytona and Talladega because there is that element of randomness. There is the big one. It's still pack racing where there can be a 20-car pileup and the majority of the field is out of this thing, and then out of nowhere we got some random people up front. But for the most part, there's more driving. This sounds bad, but there's more driving required at Atlanta. You're able to make moves. You're able to build runs and just make these crazy moves and take any part of the racetrack. And for the most part, we see normal winners there. Whereas Talladega and Daytona, we see the randomness. We see the big crashes. We see fuel strategy now implemented into them. We see random winners at these tracks. So that in itself is its own thing, comparing Daytona and Talladega to Atlanta. But super speedway racing, okay, let me wrap this up real quick to say that super speedway racing, there's been a lot of emphasis on fuel mileage since the next gen car started back in 2022. We really didn't talk about it a lot last night, surprisingly. So we actually got to see more racing than people going like 60% throttle trying to save gas. With that being said, there was actually a good amount of racing. There was actually a tiny bit of tire fall off. This is not like Richmond last week that we talked about where the tires are just shredding and falling off, because if that happened at Daytona with a big pack, things would go very wrong very quickly and we'd have more of these 20-car pileups. But with the randomness of the super speedway racing, with the pack being the great equalizer, anyone can get up there. Anyone, as long as you're in that pack, can go to the front or you can get shuffled to the back. It doesn't matter if you're Kyle Larson. It doesn't matter if you're Cody Ware. If you're Ty Dillon, if you're Chase Elliott, it does not matter who you are. You can get shuffled out from the lead and go straight to the back, but you can also make your way to the front and lead some laps. So with that randomness in mind, that makes it the easiest type of oval for a non-oval driver to adapt to. Well, Shane Van Gisbergen is a perfect example of this. And this is not to take away from his performance last night. It's not to take away from what he's done in the 2 Atlanta races this year. But the super speedway racing is indeed the easiest to adapt to for a non-oval driver because you're in that pack. If you can stay in that pack, you can get in the line and find your way to the front. But if you don't know what you're doing, you get too far out in front, they split you, you go to the back. So the point being, it's not like a normal racetrack. You can't run away with a 6-7 second lead. You can't get out front and just dominate a race at these super speedways anymore. There's a lot of randomness. We saw some random leaders last night. Cody Ware, who is last in the points, led 23 laps in this race. He had only led 11 laps in his entire career, 131 starts prior to last night, led 23. Ty Dillon, running 32nd, 33rd in points, led 9 laps. Justin Haley, running 30th in points, led a couple of laps, ended up finishing 3rd in this thing. Point being, we see everyone everywhere in this field. It doesn't matter who you are, you have a shot. And that's what makes it easier for a non-oval driver to adapt. And while you can, of course, go mix it up, you can go to the front, get shuffled to the back, make your way back up to the front. And don't get me wrong, SVG did this. There is also another strategy for super speedways. You just sit in the back and watch everyone else take each other out. You just do that. You just sit there. No, but seriously, that's actually a strategy that's used sometimes for people. SVG at times in this race, they genuinely would bail. If they didn't like something that was going on in the pack, it was getting too fishy for them, they would just drop to the back and just kind of watch and make sure they didn't get involved in anything. Now let's actually get into the race details. Started 17th. But he did not actually qualify. Qualifying was rained out, so it was based off that metric that's a little bit of a mix of last week's result, driver standings, and owner standings. So there's that little mix-in of all three. That's what sets the lineup when qualifying gets rained out. So SVG started 17th, started on the bottom lane. Bottom lane tanked early. There was no bottom lane in the first 10 laps of this race. As a result, Shane Van Gisbergen got stuck down there along with basically everyone else, and he tanked. Fell all the way back to 30th before lap 10, I think. Lap 12, there was a caution. I think they had moved up to 27th at this point. He said the car was not great, but he realized that a lot of other people were struggling with whatever he was having in his car. They ended up pitting at that first caution, restarted in 30th. And stage 1 was very caution-filled because there was another caution just a few laps later, lap 19. At this point, they're 28th. And then with 8 to go in the stage, things were getting dicey, and this is what I was talking about. Shane Van Gisbergen did the whole drop to the back and watch everyone else take themselves out strategy, and it worked to perfection for him because everyone took each other out. We saw our first, really our only big wreck of the evening. Multi-car pileup. If we go to the bottom of the results here, it took out 6 cars. Basically took out a 7th that ended up finishing 68, 69 laps down. Damaged another couple cars that were able to somewhat limp it home, only a few laps down. So this was a double-digit car pileup. I don't remember the official number. Might have been 12. Let's go with 12. That sounds like a solid answer. But SVG avoids the big wreck, is able to stay out, is able to fight for stage points. He restarted 12th with only 2 laps to go in stage number 1. So remember, he scored stage points back in Atlanta in stages 1 and 2. They were up there in the top 10 fighting for stage points, scoring stage points at a super speedway. Well, once again, he's doing it again. Avoids a big wreck early, is running up there close enough to the top 10 at the end of a stage. Doesn't quite get there, though. Him and Chase Elliott tried to do something different. They tried to start a third lane by themselves. The problem is nobody else went. So you have 2 lines on the bottom in the middle with about 10 cars apiece. And then you have 2 cars step outside by themselves. Yeah, that's not going to work. Ultimately, they get shuffled to the back. SVG finishes stage 1 20th. Another thing we see at super speedways, as I said, fuel mileage is talked about a lot. Now, once again, we didn't see that massive fuel savings where everyone's running 60%, but we did still see people pit with 1 lap to go before a restart in order to top off on fuel. Now, when there's 1 lap to go before a restart, pit road is closed, so this is a penalty. The penalty is you have to drop to the tail end of the field and you have to restart in the longest line. So, for example, if there's 13 cars on the bottom, 14 cars on the top, if you pit with 1 to go, you have to line up on the top. You can't dive to the bottom on the choose. So, we'll see often at these super speedways, the top 22 start double file, but then we just see one super duper long line go all the way back to the tail end of the field, and it just looks really, really weird. So, they did that a couple times in this race, including at the beginning of stage 2. Restarted 31st. By lap 57, they were into the top 10. By lap 65, they were into 4th place. And by lap 67, SVG had made his way through the pack, through the field, to get up front and lead the race. Him and Cody Ware having a fierce battle for the lead, just like we all expected back in March. But no, him and Ross Chastain, teammates. He was kind of following Ross Chastain up through the pack and everything, helping out his teammate. Then Chastain got the lead. Then SVG decided, I want to lead for a bit. And he led 6 laps. I think the official tally was 6. Let me double check. Yes, he led 6 laps. I believe that's the most laps he's ever led on an oval. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that sounds right at this moment. And then on lap 74, as I said, you can make your way to the front pretty easily. Or not easily, but, you know, if you're patient enough. But you can go to the back, like, that in a quarter of a lap, in a set of turns, in 5 seconds, you can get shuffled to the back, and that's exactly what happened. Shane Van Gisbergen lost, I don't remember if he lost his line or if he got ditched, but yeah, I think he said over the radio that he just made a bad move, and when he made this move, everyone went around him. He fell back. He went from 1st to 10th in like 5 seconds, and then he went from like 10th to 20th in a couple of laps. So he got put in the middle, top and the bottom just kept on flying by. Next thing you know, he's not leading anymore. He's not in the top 10 anymore, not even in the top 15. But as I said, you can make your way from the back to the front, and when you get tanked or left behind or you make a bad move and go from the front to the back, you can make your way back to the front. If you're getting a headache, it's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. So by lap 79, just 5 laps later, he's already back inside the top 10. Like, it's just how super speedway racing goes. You don't sit in one position for like 30 laps. You don't sit from 12th to 14th, from 18th to 20th. You shuffle like a deck of cards. Are you going to pull out a 2 of diamonds? Are you going to pull out a queen of spades? Are you going to pull out a 7 of hearts? You don't know. That's just, if you go back any lap for Shane Van Gisbergen, you could guess and you could be right. You're probably going to be wrong. Even if you're basing it off of his average running position, if it was like 22nd, you could pick 22nd on any given lap and probably not. Anywho, for the remainder of stage 2, there were some cautions in there. Once again, they did the sit in the back and kind of watch everything unfold, make sure they don't get wrecked. Nothing happened. There was no wreck, but they still kept the car clean and they finished 20th. They end up restarting stage 3 in 11th, and they kind of sat there for the portion of the beginning of stage 3. As I said, you don't sit in one spot, so he was going anywhere from 7th to 13th. I think he fell back to 15th at one point, but then made his way back to 9th. Like, he was just kind of sitting in the third line, just back and forth, back and forth. 51 to go, there was a caution, and then this is weird. He gets on the radio and said his helmet fan fell off. So if you don't know, I have some visuals here that Shane Van Gisbergen, his helmet, there on top of the helmet, there's like this little hose opening. And there's a hose inside the car that plugs in, and it blows cool air on the driver because it gets really hot inside of the race cars. Like, it can get as hot as like 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately 60 degrees Celsius. I mean, that's like a very, very extremely hot day. Usually, I would say on average, it's somewhere between 110 and 120. So if we split the difference there, that's about 46 degrees Celsius, if that helps. I don't know if there's actually a rule in terms of you have to have that hose plugged in, but I'm assuming it's some sort of hazard of hose blowing air all over the car, and it could be jumping around, or if the car catches on fire, it's blowing air, like that could be a disaster. So I'm assuming there's some rule there, but this ultimately hurts their top 10 potential at that moment because they have to come back down pit road under this caution, replug that hose in, and then they end up restarting at the back. And once again, they just do this whole sit in the back strategy. 24 laps to go. They confirm that they're good to go on fuel. They can make it to the end. And this is when they have that debate. They're sitting 24th at the moment. The pack is 2 wide, even 3 wide at times. And that's when the debate between Steven Doran and Josh Williams is happening. And they're saying, hey, do we dare try to make our way to the front, and then we're in the middle of the pack, and then when the wreck happens, we're guaranteed to be in it? Or do we sit back here, wait for everyone to wreck, and then we get a really good running position, we pit, we have fresh tires, and we try to make our way? Ultimately, they went to the sit in the back strategy. With 22 laps to go, like literally at the stripe, the start-finish line, Josh Williams said, I don't like this. Like, this is looking really sketchy. You know, he's not only looking at Shane Van Gisbergen. He's looking at the lines. He's looking how people are moving around him, looking at who's good to push, who not to push. Like, if their car's really squirrely, he's looking at the front of the field to make sure nothing's happening up there that could potentially impact him back in 24th or whatever he was. And he comes on the radio and he says, yeah, it's getting really squirrely up there. They're about to wreck any minute. I would back off. Get away. It's not worth it. Let's just avoid this thing. And by turn 1, literally a quarter of a lap after Josh Williams says this, BJ McLeod, I think it was Todd Gilliland that clipped him just a little bit, made a little bit of contact. BJ McLeod, single car incident, smacks the wall really hard. SVG has to brake. He has to swerve to avoid the incident, and he loses all of his speed. I mean, he didn't get wrecked, so that's ideal for Shane Van Gisbergen. But as a result, as I said, he had to slow down. Well, the problem is when you slow down at a super speedway and when there's no caution for the incident, you lose the pack. And when you lose the pack, you lose the draft. And when you lose the draft, you're losing 3 to 5 seconds a lap. It's a significant loss. A single car, Shane Van Gisbergen at this point is a single car. He's flooring it. He's in 5th gear, flooring it, max RPMs, bottom of the racetrack, making as much speed as possible. If he doesn't have any help, he's going 3 to 5 seconds slow to the field. It doesn't matter if you're a Trackhouse car. It doesn't matter if you're a Hendrick Motorsports car. We saw earlier in this race, William Byron had to serve a penalty. He was by himself. Same thing happened to him. He was going so slow. He was 3 to 5 seconds off pace. He gets lapped. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen did not get lapped. He ultimately got bailed out by a caution with 11 to go. Gets on the radio, says, you called that crash there, in reference to Josh Williams' earlier comments. They pit for 4 fresh tires. They were 24th at this point. It was like a 7-lap shootout for the win, and he ends up finishing 16th. So actually, a good result. I believe that's his second best oval result of the season because he has a tied for first with a 14th at Richmond and Charlotte. I believe that's his second best result on an oval this year. I can now confirm that. That is indeed his second best finish. 18th was his previous second best finish. So, yeah, he ends up finishing the regular season 25th in points. And I believe when we looked at his preseason goals, when we kind of did that kind of thing early in the season, I think we said 22nd to 25th in the points should be a goal. So, achievement? Kind of. But now it doesn't matter because he's in the playoffs. Those 4 wins he had on the road courses earlier in the year get him into the NASCAR playoffs. He enters with a 16-point buffer over the cutoff line as we stand. That is with those 22 playoff points he acquired from winning 4 races and 2 stages. As I said, I'll make my playoff predictions later this week, more than likely on Friday. So look forward to that. That should be fun. That should be exciting. But thanks for watching this video. If I left anything out, my bad. I think I hit everything. I think I hit the point standings. I hit the current playoff bubble. I hit everything that happened in the race. But thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, we'll be doing our last 2 championship cases tomorrow, the Monday after. I have an announcement this week. That will be extremely fun. And then Friday, I will have my playoff preview and predictions.